the what's my title? Senior Manager of Field Operations for BC Golf. I enjoy setting up these webinars every spring, well, the last 3 springs anyway. And with us is, and she's going to introduce herself a little bit, but Ann Holmes is coming to us from Prince George. And I'll just say we are looking forward to being in Prince George for the BC Summer Games this summer.
Right.
And then we're going to be up there again the next summer. I won't, so we are looking forward to coming up there. I did get a chance to go up there last year. Great golf course. I didn't get a chance to see with the trees on it. I know it's much different now than it was, but I still thought it was a great golf course and enjoyed being there. So Ann, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, sorry. One
more
yes.
thing. Sorry. For those of you out there that are listening to this, you might want to go, usually it says view somewhere on my screen. My view options are on the top right. I would go up and put that view on speaker. And that way you'll only see Ann. You don't have to see my stupid face. You just see Ann because she's going to be demonstrating things. And so if you can get up and still see your screen and want to move around, that'd be ideal for tonight, because Ann's going to lead us through some exercises. And I think that's all I'm going to say. Okay, go ahead, Ann.
We good?
Yeah, we're good.
Good. Hopefully my sound is okay. So first of all, I just want to say I'm grateful to be living and working and playing on the unceded territory of the Claytonais. So greetings from Prince George area. I am a PGA of Canada Pro. I have done the 2 levels of fitness with TPI. So some of you that have been following along on the PGA Tour with the pros that are doing the speed training and the various exercises with the fitness professional. So I did those 2 certifications. I'm a exercise physiology trained certified personal trainer, and I'm coming to you. Well, and I teach kinesiology at the college. So that's actually what I really do, but I'm coming to you. This is my fitness studio, and I have been doing golf fit classes. So we opened 4 years ago, and I do golf fit classes. So right now I have 8 classes a week and lots of regular golfers. And so what I wanted to show you today is all stuff that I work with them. And we have classes of about 8 to 10 people, and they're an hour. And what we do in the off season is to try and get everybody ready so that they can hit the ground running. Like, we still have snow and we won't be golfing until we're counting down. We're thinking the beginning of April, but it's still about 7 weeks. And so we've been doing all of these things that I'm going to talk to you today about with my my participants, and what I wanted to kind of focus on today, what Doug and I were speaking about, was just some issues with aging and the aging golfer, and what I've noticed as a practitioner and an instructor, just to help you. Hopefully you've got you're going to have about 7 weeks as well, or maybe less. You're coming to us from the Lower Mainland, but some of the big. Okay, so we've got the human body and what happens when the human body starts to age. And then we have the technique and the biomechanics of the body and the golf swing. Now those have to work together. And when we have things like injuries and compensations and what's weak and what's strong and what's supposed to be moving and what's supposed to be stable, when all of those things are good, right, then we know what that golf swing is supposed to look like. But what happens when we do have a hip replacement and a rotator cuff injury? And there's lots of things that I kind of see on a day-to-day basis with some of the people that I work with, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about just for a few minutes, and then we'll get right into warm-ups. So and then I'll show you some strength stuff. Probably not so much strength stuff, but some warm-up stuff. And then I've given you a PDF. So Doug was gracious enough to share that. I put that together so that you had some, you can reference it as well. And feel free to fire stuff in the chat. Doug's promised me that he'll read them out. My screen's like tiny and I can't see because my progressives won't get me that far. So he's going to call out any questions. So please feel free to join in that way. But training right now, and you're doing a gym routine, or you're just going to start thinking about golf season, I joke with my golfers that I should call golf fit butts and guts, because it's our glutes. So the main stability muscles for our holding us in our golf posture. So the butts and guts, so core, So we need a really a strong core to hold this position, but also it's a rotary motion, right? As we know, and then we're trying to generate club head speed. So it's a really ballistic one-sided movement. So core and then our leg muscles, our glutes in particular, but I'd say that nobody would come to a class called Butts and Guts. We call it Golf Fit and then everybody signs up. But when we see issues of aging in particular, we go rounded shoulders and then our pelvis tucks under, right? And this is just what we do on a day-to-day basis. We sit, we drive, we do dishes, we play on our phones and our tablets and watch hours of Olympics and stuff like that. So when we're in that position, right, it's really difficult to get our pelvis into this right posture so that we're able to swing. And when we're in this rounded, hunched position, right, a few things happen. First of all, is that our butt and our behinds, right, they don't fire and they don't hold that position. But what happens is then we slide and our weight's on our heels. Okay, so when you're in that position, the compensation and the balance point is now at the back of your stance, right in your heels. And if you've worked with a PGA pro, you know, like they're telling you to get onto the balls of your feet, right? Get more forward. So that's, you need to maintain that. And then the second thing is these rounded shoulders, right? And this is this poke neck, head forward position, right? Shoulders get really rounded. And when those are rounded, we lose the capsule, the space for our rotator cuff. So I see lots of people with rotator cuff issues because when the shoulder rounds, we have no ability, right, to do this overhead pressing movement. And we need this overhead position into this 90, right, on the side for the top of our backswing. So when we're golfing and we're tucked under and we're hunched forward, now we can't rotate. So we start to sway and we golf with our arms. And when we golf with our arms, now we're in the right side bush. Or we hit it nowhere. So when we want to train for club head speed, and we want to train to maintain our power, we really need to work on some of these postural correctives and work on these positions to start the golf swing. So I just wanted to kind of make you aware of those, and then it throws off our balance. So then we start, from behind. Anyways, lots of downstream effects when we lose that ability. I did want to say, though, some of the other injuries that I definitely see are older adults with wrist injuries. And so through, like, if it's a fall that you'd sustained, years ago, we lose the ability in our wrists. So doing that push-up, kind of a push-up position, right? Or working on the wall, getting into that 90, right, is going to be important, right? Because that's a position at the top of the backswing to be able to kind of get into that fully hinged position. I see, so wrist injuries, I see a lot of shoulder rotator cuff stuff, and that tends to stem from these rounded shoulders. But again, if it's a fall or it's something that we've done, slipped on ice or whatever over the years, right, or just being in that position, and then all it takes is you go to move your backpack or to shove something in an overhead bin, boink, out goes a few of those little connective tissue ligaments and things like that in your rotator cuff. And shoulder blades don't move anymore, and we really need to be able to move those shoulder blades, and they sort of just lay there dead and don't move. So that's going to be something that we're going to focus on. So I think that's what I kind of wanted to just introduce, thinking about what needs to be mobile and what needs to be stable. And certainly the mobile stuff, right, is going to be, we know our thoracic spine needs to move, but different positions in our hips, right? Especially when we're dealing with offset lies, right? So you're in a bunker and you're kind of got some goofy lies happening, right? Wrists need to move, shoulders need to move, thoracic spine needs to move, hip needs to move, and ankles need to move, and the rest needs to stay pretty stable. So if you're starting to look at some of these mobility issues, that would be a good place for you to start. But let's talk about warming up, and some of this these warm-ups will be some of these correctives. So if you've had to go to physio in the last few years, you've probably done some of this work. That's one of the things I hear the most in my classes, because we do 15 minutes at the beginning of every class on some of these prehab and these mobility and rehab kind of exercises. And a lot of people say oh, my physio's given me this, or I haven't done these in years, but I did them when I had this injury and was rehabbing. So that's what I'm going to start with. We're going to start with the dynamics. This is stuff you can do at the range before, or even at home before you get in your car and drive over to the range. And so if you want to follow along, these will, if you have an opportunity in your house to stand up and try some of these, because I hate to say that muscles have memories, but it will help implant some of these exercises when you see them on the paper later. How are we doing, Doug? Any questions? Anything that's coming up so far?
No, not really. I put the PDF.
Good?
I put your PDF, a link to your PDF in the chat. If anybody wants to download it right from the chat box, and take a look at it while Anne's doing this. You're freezing up about 2 seconds, 3 seconds every minute.
Oh,
so it's just what's happening. Hopefully everybody out there can excuse it, but it's not a big deal. So you go ahead and keep going.
Sorry about that. Okay, so what I would start with, and this is something that I had started to implement last year, because what I realized is that I turned 50 and running from my car, slamming my tailgate and running to the first tee wasn't cutting it. So I started doing some of these things. And what I would encourage you to do is cherry pick what you've got time for, what you don't feel like an idiot doing. You know, maybe in your house, you're fine, right? But I would start with some high knees. I would do some bum kicks. These bum kicks here are going to warm up those quads. Okay, so I would start with a few of these. I do these at the driving range. We have a little 5-minute little dynamic warm up that I do with all of our juniors. We run a Monday junior classes, and my poor little juniors know, and they just do it automatically. I would start doing some cross body work, right? This is going to connect the left and right hemispheres together of your brain, right? And this stretch here, or this dynamic one, is going to help with your hamstrings, because they tend to be notoriously tight. And for many of us, we sit on them all day. Then I get into a starfish position and we go opposite. We call this the starfish, but it's called a scorpion. So I would start again with the left and rights, connecting them together. You can move around if you like. Right? If you're doing them in your house, that's not a problem, but I do them at the driving range, and so do my juniors. Okay, then we do hinges. Okay, so when we're doing hinges, you're warming up your hamstring, posterior chain, those glutes, and it's like you're shaving your legs. So I want your back to be nice and flat. I want you to push your hips back, hinge from the hips, shave those legs, come on up. So this is kind of the start of a deadlift. We would do a few squats here. Okay. We also do things like external rotation are kind of important, especially if your golf course is super hilly. And then I would go internal as well. So going the other way. And I like this one, even if you take the extra time. So activate. So get into hip extension, then externally rotate and come on around. So you're going to try that a few times. It's more difficult than it looks. At least it is for me. And I do a lot of these. Okay, I would do a step back and then a bit of a rotation. So you're into a lunge position and you're going across the front leg here. So step back into a lunge, get some rotation happening. Those are pretty fun as well. With my athletes, we skip a little bit, right? Because now we're trying to create some ground force, because that's what you're using, right? You're going to push off the ground to create your speed. So we're doing a few skips. We also do some pogos. So we're up on those toes. And we also do some heel walks. So when you're heel walking, when you're stepping back, lift your hip up. Try and move it back into position where you're driving that hip up. Okay, let me just do a cheat sheet here and see if I've forgotten anything. No, okay. So then from there, I think more importantly with the legs, because especially if you are sprinting from the parking lot or you've got a bit of a walk to your range or anything like that, your legs are going to get a little bit warmer. But what I would suggest more so is these shoulders. So we start thumbs up, overhead press, right? This is shoulder flexion. Then we'll do this a few times. Then we switch it to an angel. Now, some people can do this on the wall. If you have a wall space, right? This is really fun to try and get everything on the wall. It's very difficult if your mobility, right? I see a lot of people that their angel is out in front, and what we're trying to do is bring it back here, because when you look at the mechanics of the golf swing, we need, right, this rotation in that plane of movement. So after these angels, letter T here, so palms up and thumbs up, and I would start squeezing and see if you can pull it in to a letter W. So you go from T to W. If you can imagine my shoulders getting into this W position. Now, if you've been doing this with me, I'm hoping that you're starting to find those shoulders are heating up. That's what we really want. We want those shoulders to get all unscrambled. Now from there, we can do things like scarecrows. We also do things like internal rotation, where you're working your way up your back, right? Every little bit. And I find the compensations for these ones. So if our shoulders have that rounded kind of hunched position and our necks poke forward, right? We start seeing flinging, as I like to say, we fling things. So instead of going straight up and having those shoulders stay down, we go up and we kind of lift and things pop up and we're kind of flinging and doing that kind of stuff. So what we're trying to do is get those shoulder blades back and down, right? Creating those shoulder blades that move instead of just kind of get up and hunched as we're forward, and then they lay down there and they don't work. So that would be, I'm just cheating here, my dynamic examples. If you have a golf club handy, now, especially if you're at the range and you've done a bit of this dynamic work or you've worked to get your shoulders moving, I would get going with your golf club and start doing some up downs here, right? Wrist flexion and extension. And then you can even do little steering wheels here. A little bit of rotation. Again, it's in a controlled movement. We're not flinging anything. Okay, then from there, you can go up and start working on those pecs and opening up your upper chest. Right, here we go. And I just love my little juniors, right? And they have the tiniest little golf clubs and they just go whoop all the way around and back for those dislocates. I can't do that. So this is a nice stretch to open you up, but watching that, you know, your head's not poked forward. We really want to do this with really nice tall posture. I would reach around behind, right? Hands together, do some big shoulder squeezes. And you're imagining you're pinching your shoulder blades to your spine. This one's going to be really good if you've been sitting slouching for prolonged periods of times. Boy, I sure watched too many hours of curling, Olympic curling. So I'm feeling that, right? And because I sit all day at my computer when I'm not teaching. So hands underneath, you're in this 90 position here. And you're going to do some external rotation. And lots of people cheat and they kind of do this whole side to side. And what I want your shoulders is to stay still. And then you're kind of pushing with this golf club and using it to create this rotation. Uh-oh, is my Wi-Fi kind of going goofy? Is it okay?
No, you're fine, Ann. You're fine.
Okay, because something happened on my screen and I was like, oh, what have I done?
Oh, that just when somebody asks a question, I might do something. I got one question for you.
Okay.
I know how I'd answer, but can you comment on doing a yoga warm up, which is more static, versus a dynamic warm up at home before getting to the course?
If you're used to a yoga warm up, absolutely, especially if it's going to open you up. Because I find I've done a lot of yoga over the years, and if anything that's going to open you up, but then I would do that, at home before you go, and then I would throw in a couple of golf specific things on the first tee, or in the parking lot, or on the way to the first tee, or whatever that looks like. I would do a few just golf specific things in terms of dynamic rotation, because I would make sure your thoracic spine, right, is ready to rotate. Even though you might be nice and warm and opened up, I would just do a few more little golfy specific things. But any movement you do and any warming up is already way ahead of most people, because everybody I talk to, all my golfers, they essentially just tell me that they go to the first tee and tee off. Okay, so after we've done that rotation, I would do a front lunge with my golf club, and we're just opening up that hip flexor a little bit, and you can cross body, so face on. And thanks for the question, keep them coming. So I would do a few of these, right? Cross body lunges. I would switch it around. And that dynamic one that we had done, the step back lunge with the rotation, that's a good one, right, to do here. And then what I do, and this was something I started to do last year, was I actually have a little mini band and I leave it in my golf bag. So at our studio here at Active Health Solutions, we have a full-time therapist. So if you have been to a physio or a therapist anytime in the last bit, they would have rolls and rolls of these, and they would just roll it out and cut you off a piece, and I just keep it right in my golf bag. And so, but there's lots of variations on mini bands. So I had asked Doug to put that in there, and I've got a couple here just to show you. So we have zillions of these lying around, these little mini bands here. These ones came in a 3-pack. So there's a light, a medium, and a heavy, and they're all good. I have them everywhere in my world. So I'll show you a few exercises you can do with these mini bands. You can leave them at home, or you can, again, throw one in your golf bag. We have these bands that are quite useful as well with the handles, and everything that you're doing here, right, you can do with a band, although the handles kind of whack you a little bit. And then we've started doing more things with these loops, these fitness loops. And so again, these are pretty useful, and they often, like, I got a 5-pack, and they have like small and a little bigger, and the 5-pack on Amazon for probably $20. So and those 3-packs of bands you can get from like Superstore for $12, like down their little fitness aisle. So very inexpensive to have a few tools at your service. But I know, like, even these kind of bands come, and they're called Pilates bands, and they come in a 3-pack, because I think that's what my dad bought. But what I would suggest, what I've started to do with my mini bands, is I would do some pull aparts. So in these 3, in different planes of movement, but overhead and up. You can even do this with a lanyard, although I would suggest a band is going to be a little bit easier for you. So we would do these pull aparts. This will start heating up your shoulders a little bit more. You can do a clock, right? So you're kind of going in different planes here, right? Different directions, both hands, right? We do steering wheels. I would also anchor it. So when I'm doing this, this is exactly what I do on the driving range before I start, right? Like bigger stretches here. I like doing clocks on a bigger dynamic, right? And then I go back up, right? And then I'm going to anchor it on the other hip, and I'm going to start the other way. right? Some people will do behind their backs here. When I do that one with the mini band more. And then archers would be a good one as well. We do these warm-ups. With the mini band, right, that's one, like we do the same thing and you just put your wrists in there. So this is even smaller to have in your golf bag. We'll do circles, different directions of circles. The one that kills actually the most is an air push-up. So you're imagining your shoulder blades kind of squeezing apart at the end, at the behind you, at the outer edge of this motion, right? So that's a good one with the mini band, right? And then to warm up, one of the last things that you can do if you have this kind of a mini band is go up and over. This requires a little bit of balance, right? And then this is a really good, so the muscle on the side of your butt, on your behind, is called the glute med, and that's where you have the little divot, and that's really important, right? So when you think of the top of the golf swing, the stabilizing muscle, so that you can get turned, this is the muscle that's holding that together. And if you've ever had a hip injury or pain kind of back there, it usually means that that muscle's weak and other muscles are taking over. So if we can make that one strong, and we do banded monster walks, we do 1 million of these in class, right? So this would be one just to go up and down your hall at home, up and down your hallway or in your backyard, whatever you like. And that's gonna work on that muscle there, because when you think about the stability you need, especially during offset lies, like lies where your feet are above or below, that's going to be important. So I like any of those mini bands. And even if you have the long one, right, you can get that same motion by standing on it. So there's lots of variations here. And I think that's one of the most important exercises for the golfer. So I keep that, like I said, right in my bag. That's a good tip for you, because you can whip that out on the driving range and just work into some planes of movement. So we've done our dynamics. We've done our warm-ups with the golf club. We've got some mini band work in there. Also, if you want to get down to floor level, I've put a few things on there for you, and I'll have to back up a little bit, but and you can also do these on the wall or just even in free space. But I would start in your tabletop position, and we do a lot of stuff with the wrists. So we do these wrist rainbows where we're coming forward and stacking above those wrists. And it's for some people that have had some wrist injuries, it's not that much fun. And then we do a bit of, flipping them over, working in different planes of movement, right? Different directions, right? You can do that with both hands. And again, you can do that on the wall, and I can show you that. Then from there, I would go right into cat-cow. So working on your full range of motion in your spine. And your yoga question, the cat-cow is going to be, these are going to be some that we've stolen from other disciplines like yoga. And then from here, we do crazy cat. So we're kind of looking around to see if we have, I always say, look to see if you have a tail, right? Because now we're starting to get into some lateral movement. And then we go into a thread the needle. So doing some big thoracic openers here and shooting it through. And then from there, I would do some hip circles. So keeping that pelvis flat, I would do some circles here, both directions, getting that glute firing. So that's going to be your stable muscle. The back, so that you can hold your golf posture. So I would go both directions, but I wanted to show you a few things that you can do on the wall. You can do your cat-cow on a chair, right? Or the wall here. So this is more of a shoulder blade push-up, but we're still working through the full range of motion. To get some rotation in those hips, we do in, out, press out the side. Okay, so that's going to fire that glutamate as well. These are going to be examples. And of course, you're going to have to do that both sides. And you can do your wrist mobility on the wall.
So Anne, got a question for you. So, you've been kind of demonstrating exercises for 20 minutes here or so. How much time would you maybe warm up at home before you go to golf? And then how long would your dynamic warm up be before you hit balls at the golf course, before you warm up for playing golf?
Okay. So for me personally, I made a point last year of trying to hit balls before I hit balls before most of my rounds last year. So I would get to the range and I would do less than 5 minutes of some of these dynamics, right? So I just pick a few, kind of hop around, get my heart rate up, do a bit of rotational stuff, right? Get my mini band out, do that a few times, right? So some openers, some pec openers. And then from there, I get out my wedge and I'm starting to do some small swings. So literally my warm up at the range, like my actual physical warm up before I touch a club, is less than, it's between 5 and 10 minutes if it's that, just to try and, loosen me up so that when I do grab my golf club, right, I'm good to go. I also have the full set of super speed clubs, the ones with the little weights on them. And I actually carry usually one, sometimes two, but the green ones, the lighter, it goes yellow, green, blue, red. So I'm kind of on the lower end. And so I'll swing that a few times just to get me a little bit loose. I'll swing that just to try and get, because for me, it's just getting the rotation, because if I'm not warmed up sort of through my thoracic spine, my hips, and my neck, I forgot to mention, but that's a big one, is making sure that your neck is moving properly. Like I have that in the mobility, building mobility and strength. So doing some neck work, right? Because if you can't do this, you can't do this. It's the same motion. And so I would swing with that, and then I would kind of go through, and I probably hit 40 balls. If I hit that many, I'd be surprised. So it doesn't actually take me that long to get warmed up before I zip to the first tee. So I think I could get all that done in 20 minutes. I'd like half an hour, because then I can chip and putt a little bit, because I find my short game's a little dodgy at the start. So but if I can chip and putt on top of that, so it's really not much of a commitment. But I know some people will do the band work and a bit of that kind of stuff before they go to the range, so then they can focus on chipping and putting and hitting if they do that. But I would stretch out a few things.
So some of these exercises you're showing, are they more do these 3 times a week to increase mobility and stability and balance, and some of them are more dynamic to warm up before golf, or how would you categorize them? Oops, you've frozen there.
Yes, yeah, I would suggest all of these warm-ups that I've we okay? All of these ones, I would suggest you could do them as often as you want, like through the winter, right? So any of these would be a great addition to your daily routine. If you can fit it in. We also have on my YouTube channel, that's why I put it on the sheet, is I did a series. Oh, did I freeze up again?
Oh, you're okay.
Okay, so it was right at the start of the pandemic, was April of 2020. I worked with BC Golf and we did a series, we called them Front Nine Fitness. And I did a series of half-an-hour videos on our YouTube channel that go through all of these, but also have some strength exercises as well. So if you're really stuck and you're, staying at home and not going to a gym quite yet, or you don't have a regular gym routine, those ones would be really easy to start with, because they would get you moving, and they're in your house with almost no equipment. Like it would be stuff you have already. So there is some options on there of stuff that I've been going through on there, and would be a good option for you, especially as we're gearing up, to get to golf season. Because I do find that if we've been sitting all winter or doing other activities, which has been tough in these last 2 years, right? So people aren't necessarily playing pickleball or hockey, right? League hockey and things like that, we've probably not been doing the same things. We still might be active, but not using our bodies in those ways that we're used to in the off season, that it's going to take us a few rounds, probably a good 10 rounds, to build up our stamina, to walk 18 holes, to swing, 80 to 90 to 100 times, right? So all of these kinds of things, and we don't want to have injuries right out of the gate. And that's what I see, is that's what we're trying to stave off, is some injury prevention and address some of these compensations posturally and with some previous injuries.
Okay. Just for everybody out there, I put a couple of links in the chat there for YouTube and for Anne's website, but I'll also send them out in a follow-up email that will come to you tomorrow night. Got a question about, do you have any specific warm-ups for people with lower back disc injuries or lower back pain, which I'm sure, we've got 79 people listening, probably 40 of them have lower back pain. Any specific warm-ups for that?
Sure. Okay. So that kind of wraps up the warm-up. So if building on the mobility and strength piece, I think range of motion for sure. Actually, as we age, like the space, our discs are kind of shrinking. The space between us, the intervertebral space, isn't as great, and so then it feels like more arthritis, more bone on bone. It kind of feels, and it gets a bit creaky. I find with pain, people that have a lot of pain, it's the mentality of, I'm just going to stay still till I feel better. And that never works with low backs. Like, you actually have to keep the musculature and the mobility working. But we have some pretty serious issues with our lumbar spine, because those are the big vertebrae down low that carry the weight of our trunk, and they hook to, their mobile vertebrae that rotate and move in different planes of movement to immobile. So this is the L4, L5, S1, and that joint seems to give people a lot of issues, because you're going from things that are mobile to things that are stable. So we actually need a stable lower back, and we need to be able to move our spines. And then we're going to throw in, like I said, a one-sided ballistic movement. And so doing some warm-ups at the beginning, the ones we like to do a lot of pelvic tilt. So that's the one that the TPI recommends. So getting into, and if you do have a chance to just stand up and kind of try these right now. So getting into your, like a long iron kind of swing, right? Into a stance, and then you cross your arms across your shoulders, and we're going to move from our neutral spine here to a C curve, to an S curve, and we're really trying to exaggerate it. And a lot of us are going to have these perturbations that we're kind of like, where we wiggle and wiggle, right? But doing a lot of those, because our pelvis needs to tip forward and backward. And so just working in that movement is going to be important, because when it gets tired, right, when it gets seizing up, right, these long back muscles, these postural muscles that hold our trunk upright, right, when they get tired and fatigued. So we've sat all winter, or we haven't played all the sports, that we're used to, and we haven't walked 4 hours or been out and, forced our body into this upright position for 4 hours. These are muscles, and they'll fatigue. And when they fatigue, then our default is into these really goofy positions that are just sort of this default setting, right? That our hips then pull forward, and then we have two muscles that kind of stabilize back there, and they get into these knots. Do you know that knot, when you drive a long distance and you've been sitting in your car, and they just go on either pelvis? Those are your QL, your quadratus lumborum, and they go, and then you need to roll those out, or you get your Theragun out, or you roll on a foam roller, or you just put your fist in there, right? So getting this position moving. I'm going to show you a bird dog here in a sec, but also from this position, doing some rotations here. So these are the torso turns that I have, a pelvic and torso rotations. That's in that top box there. So anything that's, we go from a forward bend position, we're going to do lots of hinging. So making sure our hamstrings are doing what they're supposed to be doing, but leaving that lower body and then working on some rotation here. And this is really challenging. And then the opposite is your upper body stays where it's at. And we're trying to rotate the lower body. And people get it all goofed up because we don't have that disassociation between what the upper body's doing and what the lower body's doing. And how we create power in the golf swing is we're trying to create a stable base to fire some shoulders on, right? So the more we can have that good stability and that good strength in the lower body, and then we fire into rotation, right? Create the ground force. That's how we get the ball out there. And when our backs are tired, then we start kind of golfing like this, and we start golfing like this, right? Without any of this rotation. So a couple of the things that I've listed. So bird dog, dead bug, and any of the plank variations that are on the bottom of the page are going to be excellent for strength, but also for firing the core and creating that, I mentioned at the beginning, like what needs to be mobile and what needs to be stable. So one of the best ones that we've ever found is our bird dog. So you're in this tabletop position, neutral neck, and then it's an opposite leg and arm. And we're not, opening up the hips, and we're not flinging anything. It's really deliberate. I would do these daily if you could, if you could. And then from there, even your variations. So we're here and you can go out in. That's going to create some more stability. Or here and then with a crunch and then back. Right? Any of those for the lower back, it's going to be really important. The last thing that I wanted to mention with lower back, I think balance is going to be a piece of this. So anything you can do with heel toe walking, or what we like to do in class is some Y balance. So onto one leg, reach forward, back 45, and then across 45, start again. So 5 of those every day, each leg, right? Because you really have to stabilize. You're firing this down leg that's creating all the balance is really firing. So that's going to be another one that's going to combine balance and lower from both the stability and a range of motion. Did that answer it? Hopefully.
I think so. Yeah.
The low back. I think, sorry, and I'll just add, because at the top, we had squats, deadlifts, tips, hinges, and bridges. So strengthening, anything that we can do to strengthen is going to be super important. So even the hinges, right? I talked about the glutes being super critical to the golf swing. So if you have weights, you can do, we did that warm up with the hinge, but if you had 2 weights or anything heavy really. And so into this hinge position, let gravity take everything down. And then you're pushing in the ground to pop back up, right? And I would test yourself to see what your hamstring flexibility is. And I hope you've got your golf club, because I want everybody to try this, is this 3 points of contact. So it's on your head. So the back of your head, between your shoulder blades and your coccyx, but it's kind of just above, like on the back of your pelvis. And what we're trying to do is get as flat as we can. Nothing's popping off of this golf club. And that's actually, I probably make it look easy because I actually work on this so much, but we do have a lot of this and a lot of this. So what we want to try and get into is this position. And I would do this daily. And what the limiter there is going to be that hamstring strength or hamstring mobility. And if you can work on that, then everything's going to fire and pull and keep that pelvis where it needs to be instead of this position there.
So, Anne, you're showing us some of those exercises for stability and mobility. Are you thinking like, do you do 3 sets of those? Do you what kind of numbers and sets do you do of those if you're doing them?
Okay, so when you're lifting, when you're doing, with weights or bands, like you can do a lot of this stuff just with bands. So you can set up a home gym pretty inexpensively. Anything around the 10 rep range. So I would say 8 or 10 or 12, 15 gets more in the muscular endurance. You'd have to lift lighter in order to do more. So if you're doing, I would say our rep range here at the studio, we always do either 10 or 12, or we start at 15. And then as they get fitter, then we lift heavier and we do less, right? So we're doing like 8 heavier ones. And as you get closer to if you're doing 10, then number 8 should be a bit challenging. Number 9 should be a bit challenging. And by number 10, you're like, okay, I'm done enough. And what I find with my golfers is that they sort of have the same weights that they always do, and they sort of just lift and they're like, okay, I did my 8 or my 10, but they could do more weight. And so pushing out of that comfort zone so that we can get a little bit stronger, because if we can get stronger, right, you're going to hit the ball further because you can create more bracing and more speed through safe, like then the joints, the muscles above and below the joints are stronger, so you can fire them faster. That's how club head speed is developed. So I would shoot for like 8 to 12 would be a good middle ground. And if you want to do more, lift lighter. And if you want to do less number, like if you can only do 6, then you have to go heavier. But golfers tend not to need like bulk or a lot of weight, but we just need the muscles above and below all the joints that are firing. Because if your muscles aren't strong, the joint takes the hit. And that's when people get in trouble with arthritic joints and joint replacements and things like that. And I've worked with a lot of people that
Okay, so I'm going to do sets of 8 to 12. Do I, like if I've got 4 exercises I'm going to do, am I doing 3 sets or are you just doing 1 set?
We do sets of 2
here
at the studio. Actually, we between 2 and 3, we go on a timer actually. But are lifting properly, you're going to get most of your fit with a really good first set. So that's where I would prefer compound movements. Right. So adding in things like anything you can do to lift, if you did it standing on one leg, is now going to fire the core. Right. Planks, it's hard. Like I would do a few extra planks. Right. If you're doing those, I would do a couple of planks. So 2 or 3 sets of those are going to be better. But yeah, it's what you have time for. Like trying to get the biggest bang for your buck. Like if you only have 30 minutes, it's really easy to do, pick say 6 or 8 or 10 exercises. And I've listed, lots on there. I would do, a squat, a lunge, a tip is another really easy one to do, right? Is now you're adding in balance and core, right? You can do a bridge. I would throw in some monster walks. I would do a push and a pull, right? Like a row and a push up. I would always do some overhead pressing as well, right? Because that's going to be important in your golf swing. So if you kind of cherry picked probably the 8 or 10 exercises that I've got listed, you can get through 1 or 2 sets within 20 minutes if you're moving. So depending on what you have time for.
Okay, so now I'm gonna build a little home gym for myself. Yeah, I'm just asking questions. Keep asking questions.
Yeah.
Keep asking questions out there. I'm just gonna keep going if you're not. I've got some bands, and let's say for your typical 60-year-old woman or 60-year-old man.
Sorry, now you're freezing up.
I'm freezing up. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Let's say if you could say both for a 60-year-old woman or a 60-year-old man.
Right.
What weights? What weights and how heavy weights would you buy for a start for home gym?
Oh, okay, absolutely. You don't need a lot to get you started. And what I would suggest, what we've done here at the studio is we've got a TRX. So this is a very functional piece of equipment. You can do a lot because now it's just body weight and everybody has a body. So it's very easy to do that. I would buy like a heavy and a medium and a light band. And if you can buy some anchor points, the one that I find is the most functional is the one at about 4 feet here, but our TRX is anchored. You can kind of see further down. And these ones, now I can do absolutely everything I need. I can squat. And then what we start to do is squat and we add some plyos. We can pull, right? We can push. We can do planks with this. We can do some rotation, right? So now I haven't even talked about any of the rotation, but any of these kind of movements with a TRX, and this thing's going to run you about, well, this is a knockoff of an actual TRX, so it's probably $100. But any of the bands, right? You can do everything you need with a band, but you need different grades, right? Like we actually have 4 sets. So we have a light, medium, heavy, and then very heavy, right? So now you can, same thing, you can push, you can pull, you can, work in lots of different planes of movements. Now you can do some rotations here, right? We can anchor it down. You can even do all of this stuff anchoring it in a door. The attachments for the TRX come with a door attachment, so you need literally a door, and you just close the door. As long as it's in a good door jamb, you're good, right? And you can move it in different planes of movements, up and down. And then I would, depending on how much weight you're going to lift, most of our classes, we don't have anything in the gym over 25 pounds. So we have sets of dumbbells that start at 2 pounds and go all the way up to 25. So we don't even need tons of equipment. If you're really getting serious though about Golf Fit, I would, in my home gym, which now I brought it here, but we have a set of medicine balls. So now you can do some slams, right? You can do some, if you've got somewhere, a brick wall or something, you can throw them and do a lot of rotational power and core. And this is all stability stuff. So a good, pick a medium sized medicine ball, even a 10-pound or an 8-pound ball. You can do pretty much everything you want. And then even, right, some of these mini bands, right, you can anchor these ones and anything you need to push and pull. Like you can set up a gym, I would think, for a couple $100.
Cool. Got a question here from I think it's a gentleman.
We're kind of out of time here.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I've yacked.
Any recommendations about sacroiliac injuries? He's got an old SI injury that acts up a quick, but I know my SI acts up. I've had to do a bunch of stuff around it, but anything to strengthen or stabilize those muscles around there, or the SI joint?
What have you had to do, Doug, for your twitchy one?
Well, it might be embarrassing, but I've had to sleep with a pillow in between my legs for 30 years now. I think I can't, if I don't sleep with something in between my legs, I wake up and I can't move. Mainly mine.
I'm on year 10 probably with that.
Yeah, it's mainly core and my glutes that I have to keep in shape. If I don't keep those in shape, then my SI does it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, butts and guts, like I said, butts and guts.
Yeah.
And I think anything that we do, right, because as much as I love a good plank, right, as much as I love planks, and we do a lot of them because they're safe, but planks are not like golf. The golf swing is dynamic. So anything that we can do in terms of dynamic movement, so adding some variety to your planks is going to be important, right? Again, because that's a really good movement to stabilize the core, like you had said. But I do find, like, if you're talking about glutes and well, okay, first of all, sorry, let's back up. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but a really big warm up, and a lot of people will find like heat and like keeping pack or a heat, some people will even golf with those heat strips and things like that. But it's really an extra warm up, because I find with those athletes, truthfully, anything will tweak it, right? Like, and then you get into this pain where now you're just managing pain, and it's usually through ibuprofen or whatever that looks like for golfers. So building your strength in lots of different dynamic movements where it's just body weight or a light band and things like that, right? Because we can do a lot of, just any of these kind of movements, right, with a very light band. And so if that's what it means to just work on the floor, on floor level, at different directions, right? Pulling and pushing and squatting and lunging. But anytime that you're on one leg, you're creating more balance, right? And now everything's starting to fire. And if you can work into those slowly, then hopefully that SI joint can be stable enough for you. But it's these crazy, flinging kinds of movements that'll get, and if we're weak or we're offloading the rotation, right? So if that joint is super locked up, then somewhere else has to rotate. And so then I find we get kind of referred pain up and down and, into different joints. So I've definitely a therapist, like a physio, is going to have to get you kind of sorted out to until you can actually build the strength.
All right, I'm going to give you one more to finish off the night. You've mentioned planks a few times. Somebody out there says, can you give an example? So I'm not sure if you mean
of the different varieties
of a plank you would recommend. Yeah, and remember, we've got mostly people the 50 to 60-year-old age group on the line.
Okay, so you can do planks lots of different ways, right? So if you want to do planks from your knees here, right? But we can do planks that have hip knee dips, right? Or hip dips are pretty good. We can do planks that have things like shoulder taps. Are you able to see this, Doug?
We are. So are you saying that you don't really recommend a static plank too much? You'd rather see movement in the plank like you're doing right now?
I don't mind. We start with the static plank just to build that core musculature, right? But anytime, because I always think that the golf swing, you need core, but it's dynamic core strength. And so it's movement. So we're always trying to create planks that have different movement, right? Because you see, when you just do a static plank, you're strong in that one position. There's no range of motion. So that's why we're always adding on to our different planks, right? So even if we're here and then we're coming up on the side, right? That's going to create, you're moving it now into the obliques, right? We can do some other kind of mountain climber planks. I also love anything, a dead bug variation. So anything that's on your back and we're dead bugging this way. So a traditional dead bug, is this way, right? But now if we want to hold a weight behind our head here and then do heel drops, right? Or we often will do with a band and we're holding it up here, right? Because now you have to fire your rectus abdominis and your obliques, internal and external obliques. And that's the position that we're trying to get into. So start with a plank just to build your core strength, and then start adding, tons of different, shoulder taps and hip dips and up downs, right? Where you're going from your elbow back up to this plank position, right? Because it's still a plank, but now we've got lots of variety there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know you could go on for another hour.
I really could. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So I've given you. There's some links in the chat for everybody out there. I will also send links in the follow-up email tomorrow. That'll come kind of about 7 o'clock tomorrow night, and with also a recording of this webinar. And I really like to thank Anne for her time. She's got energy, obviously she's got passion about this, and that's always fun to see. You really do. Which is great. You got me almost, I'm somebody that I'm a phys ed graduate that doesn't work out. So you've got me almost motivated to work out. That says a lot. So there you go. So thanks again, Anne.
That's good. Well, and I just wanted to show you, you'd asked earlier, Doug, that's my golf net. So part of our class is every time we have a class, my gang we throw 2 mats in front of there, bring the thing down, and my gang gets to hit balls. So this is what we're doing in Prince George.
Awesome.
And I look forward to hosting you this summer at the
Summer
BC
Games. The BC Summer Games. Lots of people saying thank you on the chat, and just so you know, lots of good comments. That was excellent. But I'm going to let everybody go. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and hopefully you'll join us next week where we'll talk about some low-hanging fruit to save you some strokes in the golf course with Jason Giesbrook and his time at Project Golf. All right, everybody. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Good night. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.